Hello and welcome back to this Sahi Pro training series. My dear friends, today we are going to be discussing a very interesting topic called as assertion APIs. Now in Sahi Pro, for you to do your assertion operations, there are primarily 4 API calls which you will be regularly using in the form of assert, in the form of assert visible, assert exists and assert equals. Now, when and where would you be using this? Let me directly deep dive into the concept and show you a real life scenario. Now, let's begin with assert, okay? So, now you can see I have a simple dummy application open here in front of me. So, in the Sahi training site, I will just go and log in where I will say the username is test and let us assume that the password is secret like this. Now, upon logging in, there are some available books. So, there is Java books, there is Ruby for Rails and Python, right?
I will add 1 to core Java, 2 to Ruby for Rails, and 3 for Python cookbook. If I add all of them, I got grand total as 1750. Now, I want to assert is this grand total is greater than 100. How can I do it? Simple. First, identify the text box by hovering cursor on the text box. After identifying the text box, we have to get the value from the text box. And this can be done using an API called getValue. I will cut this, put inside the getValue now. We can clearly see we are getting the value. Next, we should assert is this value is greater than 100 or not. For that, I will make use of assert API. By doing this, we can see assert is returning true, meaning text box is having more than 100.
Moving ahead, I would like to now show you the next assertion API call, which is the assert visible. Now this is very simple. If in case I were to go here and log out of this application, now watch it. If in case I go here, give the username as test and the password as 123, which is wrong. And if in case I click on login, obviously this message came, invalid username or password. Now I want to check whether this is visible to the user or not. Again, it's very simple. What I'm going to do here is, I'm going to click on the controller, hover over this message, click on control, and when I control hover over it, you can see I've got this division, right? So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go here, remove this, and I'm going to use the assert visible API call. And there I'm just going to add this div. And I'm going to check, hey, is this visible or not? And upon execution, clearly one can notice true, yes, it is visible. Now watch it, if in case I go here and I were to refresh this page, now it is not visible to the end user. Now if I were to go and execute the same assertion script, you can see the answer says assertion failed, right? So I hope you understood a real life application of how you can use the assert visible. Now, though that message invalid username or password is not visible to the end user, certainly I think all of you can understand that it is most certainly present within the DOM. It is there in the DOM, it's just that it has not been made visible. So what if the expectation is not to check whether it is visible, rather to check whether it exists within the DOM? So what we can do is very simple. That is where the next assertion API comes, which is assert exists, which directly goes into the DOM and checks whether it exists or not. If in case I were to execute this, now you can clearly notice answer is true. So it works. Now it is most certainly there in the DOM. Now imagine if I were to go and add some 2 Ds here. Now there is nothing in the DOM like this. There is no message where it's password with 3 Ds. Now if in case I were to run this assertion, it is going to say assertion failed because it does not exist within the DOM. So I think without a doubt, the first 3 assertion APIs is clear to you, which is assert, assert visible and assert exists. Now let's take a look at the assert equal API. Now it's very simple. Let me give you an example. Assume I go here and log in by giving test and the password as secret. Successfully I would be logging in. Now let us assume I add some books. 1 Java book I require. I require 2 books of Ruby, and let us assume I require 3 books of Python, right? And if in case I click on add, then a grand total is calculated here in this text box. Now what if I want to assert whether really the grand total is 1750 or not? And that is where the assert equal API will play a critical role. Now it's very simple. Let me show you how to use it. First and foremost, I'll click on my controller, hover over this grand total, in which case it has identified it. I'm going to go here and say, hey, listen, please get the value associated with it, in which case it is getting the value as 1750. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to select this, I'll cut it, and I will use my assert equal API, okay? Right. And inside this, first and foremost, within double quotes, I'm going to tell what is the value. I want to check whether it is equal or not. And in this case, the value is 1750. Now, I want to match it with what? I want to match it with whatever is the value that comes out of this text box called as total. Now, if in case I were to execute it, clearly you can see it is true. And if in case I were to go ahead and change this value here, probably I will make it as 1650. And if in case I were to execute it, clearly one can notice it says the assertion has failed. Expected was 1650, actual was 1750. So I think whenever you have text box elements where values are there and you want to assert whether they are equal to a certain value or not, then assert equal plays a significant role. So I hope through this video, the 4 assertion APIs has been clearly explained to you. Now I want you guys to think of use cases in your scripts where you can be using this and making your life easy. Also, before I end this session and complete with this concept of assertion APIs, I want you guys to remember one thing. See, whenever you guys are using me see these assertion APIs, one thing which comes in your mind is, hey, I can use these assertion APIs in a typical if-else condition, where if this assertion API returns true, you will do something. Otherwise, you will do something else, right? Unfortunately, you cannot use what an assertion API gives you as output directly within the condition of an if-else block. It will not evaluate as true and false. I want you to look at assertion as this. Instead of looking at it as true and false, look at it as success and failure. There is a success message, there is a failure message, and hence this message cannot be directly plugged and played inside your if-else blocks. So if in case you are considering writing code like this, it would not work. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you got clarity on assertion APIs. Catch you in the next class. Take care.